Good morning and welcome to this morning's reflection. I'm going to be speaking around 3 readings today, and will put them in the description below. If you'd like to read those before listening, please do. But these scriptures place before us some very stark images. One image is of a shrub in the wasteland, compared with a tree planted near water. The other is a person who trusts in human strength alone, and then one who trusts in God. And then there's a rich man feasting in comfort and a poor man lying unseen at the gate. These are not distant spiritual metaphors. They feel uncomfortably close to the world we are living in right now. Through the prophet, we hear the warning about trusting in mere flesh, about relying on muscle alone. And in the world at the moment, that temptation feels magnified. Nations trust in military power. Markets trust in economic force. Political movements trust in dominance and control. Individuals trust in self-sufficiency and a curated image. Strength becomes idealized, and vulnerability is feared. And yet, for all our muscle and all our power, the world feels very fragile. The prophet's contrast is sharp. One life becomes like a shrub in parched land, rootless, brittle, and anxious. And the other becomes like a tree planted by water, steady, resilient, quietly fruitful even in drought. And that image speaks powerfully today. For the heat is real. War, polarization, ecological strain, economic disparity. We are living through a kind of global summer. And I don't mean that in terms of growth. I mean that in terms of lack of rain, heat. The question is not whether the heat exists. It is where our roots are. And the psalm then deepens this contrast. There are 2 roads. One leads toward life and rootedness, and the other dissolves like chaff in the wind. The psalmist reminds us that what shapes us is what we dwell on. In an age of relentless media, outrage cycles, and algorithm-driven fear, what we meditate on is shaping our collective soul. If we steep ourselves in contempt, we grow harsh. If we feed constantly on anxiety, we become reactive. If we dwell in God's wisdom, we grow grounded. The psalm's image of a tree replanted suggests intentionality. It implies a choice to be situated differently. And Lent offers that, a season to relocate our trust, to move from shallow soil to deeper waters. In the Gospel reading for today, we have the story of Lazarus, a story that feels painfully contemporary. A wealthy man lives in luxury, while a suffering man lies at the door. The tragedy is not overt cruelty, it is indifference. The rich man steps over Lazarus every day. He does not see him as a neighbor. In our world, the gap between abundance and deprivation is vast. Entire populations endure displacement, hunger, and violence, while others continue in relative comfort. The Lazaruses of our time lie at the gates of our global systems, refugees at the borders of countries, families in informal settlements, communities ravaged by conflict or climate crisis. And the story asks a haunting question: who is at our gate? And do we see them? The chasm described in the parable is not created at death, it is revealed. It reflects a chasm already formed in life between compassion and indifference. In our polarized societies, we see widening chasms everywhere, between rich and poor, left and right, insider and outsider. And the gospel warns that unchecked indifference hardens into separation. And then there is that searching word about the heart. It is deep, complex, even deceptive. We are often convinced of our own righteousness. We justify our comforts. We rationalize our disengagement. But God searches the heart and examines the mind. God gets to the root of things. In a time when blame is easily directed outward, at governments, at corporations, at other nations, these readings turn the gaze inward. Before we critique the world's trust in power, we must ask where we ourselves rely on our own muscle alone. Before we lament societal indifference, we must examine our own habits of looking away. Lent becomes intently relevant here. It is not a private piety detached from world events. It is a season of rerouting for the sake of the world. Fasting confronts our consumption in a culture of excess. Almsgiving addresses the Lazarus at our gate. And prayer reorientates our trust from human systems to divine mercy. When the rich man in the parable asks for a dramatic sign to convince his brothers, he is told that they already have what they need to hear. And that line resonates in our time. We often say the world would change if only there were undeniable proof, some overwhelming intervention. But perhaps what is lacking is not revelation, it is listening. The scriptures are already speaking. The cries of the poor are already audible. The fragility of our global system is already visible. The invitation is not for more spectacle, but for deeper, deeper responsiveness. In this Lenten season, the question before us is urgent and personal. Will we live as shrubs in a wasteland, clinging anxiously to strength? Or will we become trees planted by water, rooted in trust and bearing fruit even amid a global drought? A rooted life does not withdraw from the world. It engages differently. It refuses cynicism. It resists indifference. It bridges chasms through compassion. And it practices generosity in an economy of hoarding. It speaks truth without violence. We cannot single-handedly resolve wars or rebalance economies, but we can choose where we root ourselves. And rooted people shape history much more than we realize. As we walk through Lent in this turbulent time, perhaps our prayer might be this: search our hearts, expose our hidden indifference, repaint our trust, and open our eyes to the Lazarus at our gate. Make us steady trees in a season of heat. For if enough lives are rooted near living water, even a parched landscape can begin to change. May you root yourself deeply in God today, that you and I might change the world. Amen.